Welcome, beautiful people, to Camp Koji. My name is Joel, and thank you for joining me as I break down the biggest gaming news from the week that was on any podcast you will ever need. On today's show, we're going to talk about XDefiant's future. Is our industry creatively bankrupt? And Xbox's partner preview. But first, I want to talk about Bandai Namco. So this comes to us from VGC. Bandai Namco is reportedly reducing its workforce, has canceled several titles, including games featuring the One Piece and Naruto licenses, as well as a contract project with Nintendo. According to Bloomberg, citing sources familiar with the matter, the company is, quote, taking a traditionally Japanese approach to reducing staff and sending workers to rooms where they are given nothing to do, putting pressure on them to leave voluntarily. Bandai Namco Studios has reportedly moved 200 workers to such rooms, leading to almost 100 resignations. This practice is actually called Oidashi Beya, used by Japanese corporations to isolate employees by giving them no tasks in an effort to get them to leave of their own volition rather than be let go and receive severance. So it's interesting on a few levels. Number one, obviously hearing about canceled projects, especially with licenses like One Piece and Naruto. It seems like, I'm not going to say those are like blank check licenses. Like, hey, man, if you make those games, you're going to sell millions. But those are pretty strong licenses. And obviously, any partnership that you can accomplish with Nintendo usually, I believe, ends up being fruitful. So it shows that there are probably a lot of issues internally at the company that we're unaware of. And yeah, this Japanese practice, is one that I can't remember the first time I heard about it, but I think one of the earliest examples that I remember about this practice was actually Kojima and Konami. It was something. It was a practice that Konami had employed, and I remember specifically Kojima speaking about it, or I don't remember exactly. Or was that? I think it was Jeff Keighley who revealed this about Kojima's time there, right before his contract expired when they were working on Metal Gear 5, where I think that he had revealed that at one point Konami removed him from the rest of the team and put him in a different area of the building. I don't know if it was a different floor or something like that. They isolated him in a room, and then apparently they took away his phone and internet, I think it was also. So it was like he had to communicate with the team through proxy. It was this whole crazy ideal. And a lot of people are saying it's, some companies or a lot of Japanese companies do this because of the way labor laws are structured over in Japan. It's just not as easy to fire someone over in Japan. There are a lot of worker protections, apparently. So what these companies will do is they'll lock people into a room, give them nothing to do, in the hopes that people will just kind of leave on their own. And apparently that's what was happening at Bandai Namco. A lot of these employees that were locked in these rooms were just kind of starting to apply to other jobs, or use that time to apply to other jobs. It's kind of weird, because it's like, okay, what is going on over there? Because Bandai Namco, I don't think they've had a terrible year. Tekken has been going pretty strong this year. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has been doing amazing. It'll be interesting to see what the future holds, and hopefully these employees are able to find something else soon. Our next story is about XDefiant. So last week, a Twitter user named Just4Leaks2 claimed XDefiant is already dead. Ubisoft research team is actively asking their testers to have another in-house test session and give/repeat their feedback. Multiple sources told that it's possible that the game will end its support after Season 4 if they can't get enough players. XDefiant executive producer Mark Rubin quickly debunked the claims by stating, to be crystal clear, there are no plans to shut down after Season 4. I've literally been in meetings as of last week to discuss our Year 2 plans, but right now we are super focused on improving the technical experience and adding marketing. So yes, our numbers are down, but that is just to give the team time to get the game in a better place before we do bigger spends on marketing to bring new players to the game and to bring back players that have left. So we've been hearing about this for a bit of time now, this sort of, I guess, rumor that XDefiant has been in trouble. The first we heard of it was Tom Henderson from Insider Gaming, and I think it wasn't even that long ago. It was probably like a few weeks ago, where he was saying that XDefiant is currently in trouble, that if they are not able to increase their concurrent player count very soon, that Ubisoft is basically just going to have to pull the plug on support for the game. And, now we have a little bit of, I guess, an echo of that sentiment that, hey, internally it looks like, or as this claim is being made, multiple sources told that it's possible the game will end its support after Season 4. And, of course, we have the executive producer is going to debunk it. It is really a pretty proper response, especially, this is now the second story in just a few weeks of people saying that XDefiant is, on its march towards death. So, of course, it's going to have, it's ideal to have a producer come forward and sort of quell those fears and say, no, that everything's actually fine. We've been working really hard on some future content. But this is kind of one of those scenarios where there is really no reason to trust Ubisoft. And I think this is becoming quite the conundrum now with this these free-to-play titles where, I feel like I've brought this up before. I don't remember where or when, where I was saying that right now free-to-play titles are in this weird positioning where as a consumer, you have to now start treating them like an investment. And that's never happened in gaming pretty much ever before. When you bought a game, even if it wasn't, obviously this includes multiplayer and single player, but there was never that thought in your mind that if I buy this game, their service is going to end. Like, by the time service ended on a multiplayer game, no matter how much you played it, if that moment came where the plug was pulled, it felt like it was like a decade, 15 years after a multiplayer game. Like, it was probably well behind you. And the people that were still playing that game were usually in like the minority at that point in time. But then also, when you think about, especially on PC, you still have these older games that still have dedicated servers and stuff like that. But it never really crossed your mind when you went to buy, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, is this game going to exist in a year from now? And, now it's interesting because I think consumers are putting themselves into this position where the entry price is so low, right? It's free. If you're on PC, you don't even have to play. You don't even have to pay for multiplayer. Some free-to-play games on consoles are you don't need to pay multiplayer for it. So it's really outside of the cost of your IP and the machine you're running it on. You're not having to pay for these games. So the price of entry is so low just to give it a try. But then I think the next step that happens, it's almost like, being apprehensive about spending money on these games. And when these types of stories come out, what's the position that these teams are now put in because of these stories is, now you're kind of fighting for your life, right? You're fighting for the future of being able to continue supporting this game. And when you have stories like this out, it's probably like the worst possible thing that can happen, because the moment that these stories come out, as a player of this game of XDefiant, maybe you were a regular consumer, maybe you were buying season passes and you were buying skins. At that moment, you're probably saying to yourself, I don't think I should buy this season pass. I don't think I should buy any more skins. So it almost leads to this natural drop in their recurring revenue at a moment in time where they need that recurring revenue the most. Stories like this, especially if they remain unchecked and continue to spread, can put these games into such a weird position where, now at the moment that you need the most players, these players are being told, hey, this thing is about to shut down. And I think that's why you have this producer going forward like, oh, no, there are no plans to shut down after season 4. And, unfortunately, it could be a lie, right? I just feel like there's no reason to take Ubisoft at their word. There's probably no reason to take a lot of these companies at their word anymore when it comes to these free-to-play titles. They've shown that no matter what happens, if they can't make it financially work, they're just going to shut these games down. And sometimes you have these teams that do the right thing, right? So for PlayStation, as much of a disaster as Concord was, I mean, it's probably set the record for the shortest amount of time released. They'd still, hey, they refunded everybody. No one wasted any money on that, which is great. You have, EA and, what was it, Valence Studios, I think was the developer, with, what was the name of this game? Knockout City, that when that shut down, they went ahead and added dedicated servers so people can continue the life of the game, which I thought was really awesome to see. So in these moments in time, it's like you kind of can't trust any of these companies when it comes to keeping these games alive, and especially a company like Ubisoft, which there is this precedent when you think about something like Hyperscape. And XDefiant is one of those games where the moment that I saw it, I was like, I just don't see a scenario where this game works. I laughed at anybody that said this was a Call of Duty killer. And I think it shows, the failure of this game shows how powerful intellectual property is, and that Call of Duty name is, where it felt right with XDefiant, right? Where people were saying, hey, they're finally giving us the game. You hear so many people complaining about skill-based matchmaking, how much it sucks and how much they hate it. And this game, wore it as like a badge of honor, like we're not going to do that, we're not going to have that. And then they didn't get the support on the other side. It shows Twitter and social media really isn't a real place. A lot of people talk the big talk, but then they don't actually go ahead and download and support these games, but they're going to be playing Black Ops 6 in a week, a week from now. And I think that's the other tough part about XDefiant is we hear all these rumors. And not even next week, this week is the release of Black Ops 6. And now you have a game that is, for the first time, going to be accessible at a pretty low price, right? If you own a PC, you can access Call of Duty for $12 a month. If you have an Xbox, you can now access it for $20 a month. So that can only naturally increase the player base even more. And I think that's going to kind of be the beginning of not even beginning of the end, but probably close to the end of XDefiant as a service. I just wouldn't trust this company. I personally, if I'm a player and I'm a payer, I'm not giving this company any more money at this point in time. It just, the writing is on the wall. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of one of those things where you kind of have to see it for what it is and, understand that, this thing is probably not going to last very long. It shows how important it is to try to be very wholly original with the game that you make. You can't just take, even if it sounds like a good idea, like, hey, it looks like everyone loves Modern Warfare, let's try to go to that type of gameplay. It doesn't mean there's going to be a home run. Our next story, I wanted to talk about this story that came out of Gamescom Asia from former PlayStation head Sean Layden, who commented to VGC on the future of the industry. So I wanted to go through a few of these quotes that he made. He said, quote, "We've done these things this way for 30 years. Every generation, those costs went up and we realigned with it. We've reached the precipice now where the center can't hold. We cannot continue to do things that we have done before. It's time for a real hard reset on the business model, a hard reset on what it is to be a video game. It's not 80 hours. It's not 90 hours. But if it is, that's a whole different category." And then when asked about future console hardware, Layden said he believed that a power boost on its own would not appeal to the majority of players. He says, quote, "It has plateaued. We're at the stage of hardware development that I call only dogs can hear the difference. If you're playing your game and sunlight is coming through your window on your TV, you're not seeing any ray tracing. It has to be super optimal. You have to have an 8K monitor in a dark room to see these things. We're fighting over teraflops, and that's no place to be. We need to compete on content. Jacking up the specs of the box, I think we've reached the ceiling. That race is nearly over, and you know who won? AMD. This is a very, very interesting story that was making the rounds last week. And, Sean Layden has shown himself to be, pretty smart in terms of, our industry, where it is currently and where it's heading. He famously had talked about how, the AAA model is not going to be sustainable very soon. And he was absolutely right about that. We've kind of seen the collapse of that model where now games are becoming too expensive. They're taking too long to build. And now it's starting to become a problem. And, now he's bringing this up, and there's a lot in here that I can't help but wholly agree with. And it's something that I've spoken about previously, which is this arms race that we've been in is kind of over. Like, we're done with those days. We're done with the days of like this really big fidelity jump. A lot of us have been saying that the last big technical leap we saw was between PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. And that is 100% right. Like, when you don't even have to have lived through that time. When you just compare Metal Gear Solid to Metal Gear Solid 2, it really is completely night and day. Where, you notice sort of these tricks that, Kojima and his team had to use in order to sort of convey 3D space. It's very, very different from the way that they were able to fully execute onto that idea when you think about something like Metal Gear Solid 2. And I think it was the first time that I remember it felt like the industry was finally getting the fidelity of facial scanning correct, being able to play an NBA game and those players actually look like the real life players and things like that. So, I think that we're kind of away from that moment, away from that point. And it's weird because a lot of conversations that happen within our industry, and especially on gaming spaces like we see on Twitter, are kind of surrounding the Digital Foundry of it all, right? You have this team at Digital Foundry that will break down the flops, the teraflops and the frames and all this stuff, and the CPUs and GPUs. And I think we've definitely reached a moment of splitting hairs where you'll see people who are like obviously these really, really huge PlayStation fanatics put, PlayStation 5 Pro next to a PlayStation 5 image and go, wow, this is crazy. Look at that jump. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's really not that crazy. Like, it's better, don't get me wrong. But I think anyone that's saying like, wow, my mind is blown. This looks, much better than the PlayStation 5 version. It's like, no, it kind of doesn't. It looks better. I wouldn't say it looks much better. And, now I think we have reached that moment in our industry where it's not only just competing on content. I think it's more about performance. I think consumers now are just looking for more performance. I don't think they're looking for more ray tracing, more, much better lighting. I think even when we think about Unreal Engine 5, it's obviously been having so many issues running on console. A lot of people talk about these stuttering issues on PC. You see it coming up a bit too. And, I think that our games right now have not reached that Unreal Engine sort of test footage that we saw at the beginning of this generation with, I remember it was like a female protagonist. It was like a bunch of ruins and stuff like that. I don't think many games have really reached that fidelity and simultaneously have run very, very well just yet. So when you look at what happened with Unreal, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago where they were showing off some new tech in lighting. It's like, wow, this lighting absolutely does look amazing. But it's almost like one of those things where it's more like, okay, it's more tools for these developers to be able to fully execute the idea that they have. and do it a lot quicker than they used to be able to do, especially with something like lighting. Lighting is so important in conveying just the graphical quality of a video game. I think it's something that a lot of us, we don't really think about, right? We think a lot about pixels and all this stuff, but I think a lot of us forget about how important lighting is to the art direction of a video game. So we really have reached that moment now that we're splitting hairs. And I think for a lot of consumers, it's like, okay, now I think the next phase is more about performance, where when you think about technologies like PSSR, I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where Xbox has confirmed that they are working on another generation of hardware. I can't imagine a scenario where they are also not creating their own sort of DLSS technology, very akin to what we're seeing with PlayStation and PlayStation 5 Pro. The advantage that PlayStation now has, though, is that with the PlayStation 5 Pro coming out very, very soon, they now are, almost have access to a bunch of test data, in terms of how it performs and being able to improve it by the time PlayStation 6 comes along. But I can't imagine the next Xbox not being able to do that. That type of technology, what it actually leads to, more than even just like better, sharper fidelity, the most important thing that it leads to is much better performance while your game is still looking really, really good. And I think that that's really what consumers are wanting right now. They want a game that launches and just performs really, really well. And it seems right now that sometimes we struggle to do that in our industry. Whereas, it's something I brought up that echo the sentiments of Sean Layden, which is when I think about the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's kind of true. It's not just the price of the console being $700. If you're buying the $700 console and you're running it on like $100 monitor, then it doesn't even, you're not going to be able to get anything across, right? You need the right monitor, you need the right cables, you need the right conditions in order for what's being advertised to you, in order for you to be able to capture that inside of your own home. So it's like, $700 is expensive, but it pales in comparison to the fact that it can't be bought alone. If you plug this into just a regular old television, maybe one that you've had for a little while, you're probably not going to get the response that you wish you could, or you're not going to be able to replicate what you've been able to see in terms of what PlayStation has been showing off, whether it's 4K, 8K, or even something like 120 frames per second, right? You need the right monitor, you need the right TV for something like that to happen. So I actually do agree with him, where it's like, it's just another aspect where the console race and the console wars has sort of hit this wall. We've broken through that, where there kind of isn't a console race anymore. And like, yeah, you can look at that and say, okay, yeah, there's no console race, because, PlayStation 1 or something like that, because a lot of people pit PlayStation head to head with Xbox. But it's more so not even just talking about what's happening right now with power and graphical fidelity, but it's also content-wise in terms of what we've seen with PlayStation putting more and more of their games onto other consoles. We really are going to enter into this era now when you think about specifically PlayStation versus Xbox. I think more so than what Nintendo is doing, is it's really going to be a match between two things. I think it's going to be between content, the actual content that they're able to deliver that you can only play if you're part of these ecosystems, and then B, which I think is going to be more important, is going to be value. I think the value proposition, I think, is going to be the important one moving forward, more so than which console has the more teraflops or whatever. He also commented on creativity in the industry. Quote, if we're just going to rely on the blockbusters to get us through, I think that's a death sentence. You're looking at sequels, you're looking at copycats, because the finance guys who draw the line say, well, if Fortnite made this much money in this amount of time, my Fortnite knockoff can make this in that amount of time. We're seeing a collapse of creativity in games today with studio consolidation and the high cost of production. Now, the timing of this statement is actually really, really interesting, because I read it the same day that what's the name of this studio? I think they're called 31st Union. They showed off their latest game that's being published by 2K, and it's called Project Ethos is what it is. I'm not sure if that's a final name. It probably is just a placeholder for now. And I think I've been looking forward to what this team has been working on for quite some time. This team was established, I think it was over 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a little bit of time since I remember this team being put together. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, man, I wonder what they're working on. It's probably something really, really cool. And then they show this thing off, and it's one of those videos that you see and you instantly go, oh my God, this is absolutely going to fail. Like, there is not a single scenario where I can look at a game like Project Ethos and say, yep, that's the one. That's definitely going to do well. And I think Project Ethos is so funny. It echoes... It's almost echoing the same mistake that Concord made, where, when you build these games, it's not like this game was built, they started building it 3 months ago, right? It's been years since this was being built. And I'm sure at the moment that they started building this, it sounded like a good idea. But no one at the time thought to themselves, this is cool right now. This might work right now, but is it going to work when we're finished? Is it going to work when we're finally able to deliver this? And who knows if they had a timeline in place, whether it's 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. But if you're not able to answer that question, you kind of have to go back to the drawing board and be 100% sure that the game that you're going to make is still going to be relevant by the time you actually go to release it. Because that's the exact same issue that happened with Concord, except Concord was like Overwatch, whereas this Project Ethos games, you can tell that they borrowed a lot of their inspiration from Fortnite. It looks like a Fortnite game that was built with, like, doesn't Fortnite have like a Unreal Engine sort of building thing? I don't remember what exactly it was called, but it sort of feels like that. It feels like a modded version of Fortnite, and it is a different game. It's not exactly like Project Ethos. But it's one of those games that when you look at it, it's like, yeah, you guys are doing something a little bit differently. I think it is an extraction shooter, but it's definitely not unique enough where you can look at it and go, yeah, this is definitely going to be a success. And it just kind of, I'm not going to say it blows my mind, but it really just reminds me a lot of Concord, where it really is one of those moments where at the beginning of this year, I think you look at this game, because it must have been at a state where it probably didn't look exactly like what we're seeing now, but the gist of the game was there. The art style was probably set in place. You could probably run and view a full match. I don't know how at the beginning of early this year or late last year, there wasn't anyone that stopped the presses and said, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think this is going to work. Because I felt that like literally exactly the same watching this trailer as I did with Concord, where I looked at it and I said, this game feels like it's 5 years too late. There's just no way that this game is going to succeed. And I said that I definitely didn't think that Concord would fail that fast, but I definitely look at Concord and I was like, there's no way that this game is going to succeed. And when you look at this Project Ethos, it sort of feels the same. The heroes that you're seeing, none of them look interesting. None of them feel interesting to play as. They all look really dorky and just super lame. And now it's literally the same issue that happened with Concord, where it's like, man, at the very least, you have to have heroes that are compelling. And these heroes, just look super duper boring. They look extremely generic, and yeah, it just looks really, really lame. And then obviously there's the problem of it. You look at it and it invokes so much of Fortnite. It looks and feels just like Fortnite. You cannot compete against Fortnite. If you're not visually distinct enough for what Fortnite is doing, you're just not going to be able to succeed. And this is one of those moments where it's like, yeah, this is sort of like creative bankruptcy, and we've seen it happen. Even a game like XDefiant, you can look at that, and you can feel the Call of Duty blueprint. With Concord, you can feel this blueprint of Overwatch, except it's like a really, really cheap, much, shittier copy of what's already been so immensely successful. And I wouldn't say that we're at this moment right now where there's this complete creative bankruptcy, but I think when a lot of us look throughout the year and we think about creativity, whether it's artistically or creativity, especially in terms of game mechanics, a lot of it, what we're seeing is really from indie and is from smaller teams. Like those are really where the conversations are happening right now. Like, last month, I think it was, I was finally able to try Animal Well. And I think so far it probably might be my game of the year. It's probably the game that I've enjoyed the most playing this year. But it's one of those games where when you start it, when you play it, everything about it feels creatively fresh, even though it is built around one of the oldest genres in our industry. Like it is a straight up Metroidvania. And what's interesting is that I didn't really know much about Animal Well. When the reviews first came out, everyone was praising it so much. It kind of got to a moment where I was like, okay, this sounds like a really good game. A lot of people are talking about it. And I said to myself, you know what? I don't really want to read more on it. I'm just going to wait until I have time to actually play through it. And, I discovered, I was like, oh, yeah, this I see the map. I see the structure. Okay, this kind of is a Metrovania sort of through and through. And, but there was so much creativity throughout, whether it was in the sound design, whether it was in the music, whether it was sort of in these really simple mechanics that were that were being built. I just loved the way that game was structured. And then obviously finding out that the entire game, even down to the sound design and the music, was all done by a single person is pretty insane when you play that game. It's really hard to believe that happened, especially because the game is just filled to the brim with these, secrets and Easter eggs. And it honestly feels like it never ends, There's just so much to dig into when it comes to that game. And when I think about that and I hold it up against everything else that we see from these big AAA companies, a lot of it just pales creatively to what we're seeing with a lot of these indie games, a lot of these smaller titles. And I think part of it is they're able to move faster, but I think the big part of it is that they are not beholden to shareholders. When you look at games like Concord, it really feels like it was built in a boardroom. That's like the best feeling that you can walk away from when you look at something like Concord, and you feel it multiple times throughout the year. Even other stuff that kind of didn't see much success, like things like Foam Stars, or talking about something like Project Ethos, where it really just feels like it's built in a boardroom, where these companies are pointing the finger at these success stories and saying, look at what they were able to build, in a cave with a box of scraps. Why can't we replicate that success? Why can't we do what they're doing? And I think that that's been the biggest problem that Sony has been running into when it comes to their initiative with the live service stuff is they've been looking at all these other successes and they forgot how to think small and bring things back to basics. So I think for me, when I think about this conversation about creativity in the industry and they're relying on blockbusters, I think that is obviously going to continue. We're seeing more and more companies kind of rely a little bit more on their legacy IP, rely more on adapting popular IP, whether it is, Dune or Star Wars or anything else that's out there. But I've been saying for a while, I still think that the future, in order to keep our industry healthy, it's you have to allow these teams to move a lot quicker, move a lot faster. And I think double A really is the way to go. When I think about what's the name of this game, is it Expedition 33? I think it's the name of it. That turn-based RPG that everyone's sort of talking about. Claire Obscure Expedition 33. They announced that game is going to be $49.99 and it's going to be 30 hours. And it's just overwhelming positivity where people are like, yep, that's exactly what I want. It looks great, right? It looks like it runs really great. You guys have this amazing voice cast that you guys just revealed. And then it's like the cherry on top. It's like, yeah, it's only 30 hours, but we're only going to charge you $50 for it. So once again, that is value. Gamers look at that as very, very valuable. Where it's like, yeah, it's cool to look at a game like Metaphor, right? Which is like, yeah, you can expect 100 hours. But I think there are a lot of gamers that are just like, yeah, I'm happy with 30 hours. But what's important is that you also price it appropriately. So it's like, okay, cool, it's only $50. That's a really, really good price for 30 hours of gameplay. And I still think that that's really what our industry has to be looking towards. Our final story, we're going to talk about the Xbox partner preview. So this is probably maybe the third or fourth one of these that they've done. I absolutely love this format. I used to judge Xbox a lot. I felt like they were the last to arrive to the party in terms of, stop putting people on stage, stop answering your own questions. It's getting boring. It breaks up the pace. I don't need to hear from your executives in between these trailers. Just show us the gameplay. And I like these because it's really just showcasing exactly what it is. They're partners. They're partner previews. Is showcasing and highlighting these third-party games that maybe would have been lost in the shuffle. And there were some, big and small announcements here. So I really, really enjoyed it. So let's start off with you look at Alan Wake 2, The Lake House, which is coming October 22nd. Obviously, this looks really, really phenomenal, which is kind of funny because I haven't actually, right now I think it's next up on my plate, but I haven't actually started the Night Springs DLC that came out quite some time ago. I still have to get started on that. But yeah, this looks really, really amazing. I'm looking forward to it. That's coming out very, very soon, October 22nd. Next up was Chronos: The New Dawn from Bloober Team, and that's coming 2025 to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. So this was definitely a surprise. Bloober just delivered on Silent Hill 2. Really, really good reviews. It looks to be a critical and commercial success for them and Konami. And, they were taking so much shit leading up to Silent Hill 2, where a bunch of people did not believe in that team. They saw everything else that they had built previously, whether it was Medium or what's their other series? I think it's called Layers of Fear. And they're like, yeah, we just don't trust you guys with this remake. It's probably going to suck. And all those people had to eat their shoes because they apparently delivered on that remake. So I definitely didn't expect to hear what they've been working on so quickly. So it's really cool to see that they've already moved on to something else. And it's really cool to see that it's something original. And this I thought was a really, really compelling trailer. You have, your main character playing chess with this old lady, intercut with all this horror imagery. And it ends with sort of a brief snippet of gameplay, and it really it looks like Dead Space, but like the horror cranked up to like 15 or something like that. I think aesthetically it looks cool. Everything about this looks really, really dope, and it's just cool because it's like, I think if Silent Hill 2 failed or didn't do as well, I think a lot of people were like, oh, here's another garbage Bloober game. But it's almost like now that logo goes up and people sit up in their seats, they're like, okay, now I have to pay attention because these guys have proven that they know what they're doing. So I think it's just really, I can't imagine how great that team must feel to sort of feel like, you dropped your Silent Hill early trailers and you're reading through the comments, you're seeing the thumbs downs, you're seeing all the negativity, and then to be able to deliver and effectively shut those people up, and now put yourself in a position where you're like, yeah, this logo now means something. I think it's really, really cool to see from that team. A brand new game was announced called Blindfire and actually hit early access same day. It's coming on PC and Xbox Series X. This was really interesting. It was born from an idea. I was reading up on this. The developer had, I forgot what it's called. It's some play on the word Saturday. I don't know if it was called Shatterday or something weird like that, where they dedicate a day for their team to come up with a crazy idea for a video game. And one of the ideas that they had was someone saying, like, what if we did a first-person shooter versus shooter, except it's played in the dark? And apparently that was sort of the nugget of the idea, and then they sort of built upon it. And that just looks like what this game is. You play in the dark. It looks like there's a mechanic where you can sort of briefly see the layout of the sort of this small arena that you're playing in. And I was watching some gameplay of it. I think there's like two takeaways that I take from this. It's like, number one is, once again, echoing what I said earlier. It's really these smaller teams that are allowed and are empowered to really think outside the box and try to bring something fresh and something new into the industry. And this is kind of a neat idea. It's so cool. But at the same time, when I saw the game, I'm like, yeah, this doesn't feel like a full game. It feels like maybe a mode inside of a game, or like, I don't know exactly what. Actually, let me look that up. What is the cost of this game? Let me see if I can look that up really quickly. Oh, actually, it's very appropriately priced. It's only $8.99. That seems good. For what I saw from the game, it really feels like a mode, more so like than a full game. But I like that it's priced in under $10, which I think is really, really cool. Okay, that's really nice. I like that. But yeah, it's cool to see these where it's like, yeah, I don't know how many matches I will be able to play of this before I kind of get a little bit tired of it, to be honest. But it's cool to see such an original idea be put on a stage like this. We got a new look at Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which is coming a week earlier than previously announced. That's on February 21st. They sold off some naval combat. That looks really cool. We got a new trailer for the rubber hose shooter Mouse PI for Hire, which is coming 2025. Like, I remember first seeing this game. It was like 2 years ago or something like that. I saw the concept of it. I don't remember where I saw it. It might have been TikTok. And, now to see it kind of fully fleshed out is really cool to see how much it's grown. But it's also one of those games where I look at it, I just feel like that visual style doesn't really work for a first-person shooter. I think it works so well when I think about side-scrolling with something like Cuphead. But I feel like this in first person, in terms of the way that the frames are captured, I don't feel like it works very, very well. But, yeah, that's coming out in 2025. Subnautica 2 was announced. Early access is in 2025, coming to PC and Xbox Series X. That is also coming to Game Pass. That looks really cool. Animal Well actually shadow dropped on Xbox. I talked about this early on the show. It probably is the closest thing to my game of the year right now. I really, really enjoyed it. You do have to really be into, what do you call it, Metrovania type of style, but it has it's much more puzzle focused than I think some of those other games. It's not really combat focused. It's a lot of puzzles, which I really, really enjoyed. But it's just a really, really good game. So yeah, so that shadow dropped on Xbox if you want to check that out. Eden Zero was announced as coming 2025 for PC and Xbox Series X. This is apparently based on an anime, so that looks really cool. Eternal Strand looked pretty neat. That's coming early 2025 to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. Another game that's also coming to Game Pass. That looked really cool. Mistfall Hunter was announced coming 2025 to PC and Xbox Series X. It is a PvPvE cross between a Souls-like and an extraction game. That look neat. Wheel World coming early 2025. It's a racing game with bikes. PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X also coming to Game Pass. Phasmophobia early access was announced for consoles because I think it was only previously on a PC. It's coming to PS5, PSVR 2, and Xbox Series X October 29th. We got to look at a game called The Legend of Babu, which is coming to PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X in 2025. That looked really cool. It's like a kid and his dog. That looked kind of fun. Then we got a new look at Wu Chang, Fallen Feathers. There's a lot of Wu games. Was it Wu Long, Wu Chang? What was the other one? Wukong. I don't know why that name always escapes me. So Wu Chang, Fallen Feathers coming 2025 to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. Also coming to Game Pass. So that was not previously announced. That was a new announcement. That's also coming to Game Pass, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, these games, I feel like we've been seeing them more and more often. I feel like every single one of these direct stream events that PlayStation Xbox does is like one of these types of games. These like hack and slash Souls-like looking games. And look, it looks really cool. I think the animations and the art direction are really, really neat for this game. Definitely one that I'll keep my eye on, especially if it's coming to Game Pass. And then finally, kind of a surprise announcement, FBC Firebreak coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X in 2025 from Remedy. So it's kind of cool. Remedy opened the show at Alan Wake, and then they closed the show with this. So this is a 3-player co-op game. This has been rumored for a while. Not rumored, confirmed. Remedy did confirm that they were working on their first multiplayer game, but we really didn't know exactly what it was, what it was going to look like. Number one is first person, which is cool. I think the last first person anything that Remedy worked on was probably Crossfire. They worked on the campaign for Crossfire. So we haven't really seen anything first person from them. So it's kind of cool to see that perspective. This is also going to be the first game that they self-publish, which is a pretty cool accomplishment from them as a team. I'm very into the Remedy verse, as it's been called, the crossovers between Alan Wake, Control, and at times even Max Payne, and then now to see that Firebreak takes place after Control 1, so it looks like it's going to take place between the events of Control 1 and eventually Control 2, which we know that is something that they're working on. So that's really cool story-wise. What's interesting about this game also is that it's going to launch on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium game catalogs when it launches in 2025. That's rare. There's not many games that do that. I think the last game that I remember that did that was probably Sea of Stars. And I think that probably means that they really needed those deals like in order to finish this game. It sort of helps a bit in terms of guaranteeing the success of that game at launch, which I think is pretty great. It's pretty amazing to see it accessible to I mean, what is that number? What's that number even at right now? That has to be over probably 50 million players that have access to that game day one through those services alone, which I think is really, really cool. Once again, it increases the chances of success. Yeah, I mean, it looks phenomenal, looks fun. I definitely would like to revisit the world of Control. I actually want to replay Control. It's kind of on my list. I do want to replay it. And there was something else I wanted to add to that. I guess not. Yeah, I think it looks phenomenal. It looks really, really good. I'm very much looking forward to it in 2025 when it finally comes out. Remedy has really been firing on all cylinders in the last few years. It felt like there was this moment where it felt like Remedy was like done for, I feel, when you think about before, like I was one of those people that never ever thought Alan Wake 2 would ever happen. And I think Control really gave them that boost that they needed. Quantum Theory didn't really do super well for them. That's actually the only game that they made that I haven't actually played yet. I definitely need to go back and give that a try. And then, Control sort of flipped everything. That game was a commercial critical success, and it's just been really cool to see, Alan Wake 2. Now they're releasing this, which is honestly just really, really fun. They're also working on the Max Payne 1 and 2 remake, working on Control 2, so they really are firing on all cylinders. And overall, I really like this Xbox partner preview. There was a lot to look forward to if you are a Game Pass subscriber. FBC Firebreak, Wuchang, Wheel World, Eternal Strands, Subnautica 2. What else was on here? I think that's it in terms of coming to Game Pass. But that's pretty good. It's shown that once again, that's one thing I've been liking about Xbox. They continue to deliver that value for Game Pass, where when you have it, it really does feel like at the very least there are a handful of games per month for you to give a try. And the true test is coming up this week with Call of Duty. And that leads into our hot releases for the week. October 22nd, Faith Farm, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Fear the Spotlight, PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. No More Room in Hell 2, PC Early Access. We also have, on the 22nd, Batman Arkham Shadow coming to MetaQuest 3, Dead Island 2 Ultimate Edition, PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Linked Banner of the Spark coming to PC. October 23rd, we have Rivals of Ether 2 coming to PC. October 24th, Yakuza Kiwami for Switch. Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven, PS5 and Switch. Windblown coming to PC Early Access. And then finally, October 25th, we have Sonic X Shadow Generations coming to all platforms. And then Call of Duty Black Ops 6, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, and Game Pass. Time for us to wrap it up. These are the stories that we didn't have time to get to. Just a week before Call of Duty Black Ops 6 release, Xbox has suspended their $1 14-day trial to Game Pass Ultimate. Now, of course, this is not a surprise. They don't want anyone to access the biggest game to ever enter Game Pass for just $1. So there's no surprise why they're going to do this. I think what they probably should have done is just moved it over into standard. So maybe keep the $1 deal, but keep it to Xbox Standard, which won't be getting Black Ops 6. But I was reminded online by someone that they actually did the same thing with Starfield. So it looks like this is probably going to be part of their strategy going forward. So maybe even Indiana Jones that comes out very soon. You're probably going to see that again. If they reactivate it, they're probably going to deactivate it again. But I kind of feel like this might be deactivated maybe for the rest of the year, maybe or at least for like a month. I don't think they want people to play Call of Duty for $1. They want their $20. A leaked secret level trailer unveiled a star-studded cast that includes Arnold Schwarzenegger and his son Patrick, Kevin Hart and his daughter Heaven, Keanu Reeves, Gabriel Luna, Ariana Greenblatt, who recently played Borderlands Tiny Tina, The Mandalorian's Emily Swallow, and The Boys' Claudia Dumo. All this sounds phenomenal. I, like so many others, have been waiting for this game. That trailer has not been officially released just yet. So I figured it would have been released this weekend, since this weekend is Comic-Con. But it looks like it's actually not posted just yet. But yeah, we won't have to wait long for this show. It comes out in December. I'll definitely be there day one. Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC on January 30th, just 15 months after its PS5 release. Insomniac also confirmed no additional story content is being planned for the game. So this is officially the shortest window between PlayStation and PC release for an original PlayStation title. The shortest window still, I think, goes to The Last of Us Part 1 Remastered. I think it was like 6 to 8 months, something like that. But this is the shortest window for an original video game. And I think, this is the trend going forward. They're getting closer and closer to that 12-month mark. It is something that Herman Holtz had hinted at, that was sort of their philosophy. It was going to be at least 1 year. And yeah, I think everyone just kind of has to get used to this. This is just a sort of part of their planning for the future. I still think it's going to be a while till we see day and date. And I think that's really the way for PlayStation to go. But I think we're getting closer and closer to that 12-month mark. And then no additional story content. Some people look disappointed. I feel like you shouldn't. I think it's better off for them to focus on Wolverine. I think it's better off for them to focus on this potential Venom spinoff. So with Spider-Man 1, we had the Miles Morales spinoff. It looks like they're planning to do the same or something similar with Venom. And I think that it just makes more sense for them to move forward rather than create downloadable content for this game, especially since it's been out for over a year. I feel like DLC is something that you want to announce before the game even releases. You want to get it out in a timely fashion, 3 to 6 month window. Very similar to what we saw at Alan Wake 2, where they said, yeah, we're going to do post-launch content before it launches, because you want people to buy the game and then hold on to the game for that DLC. You want to be able to sell that $100 pack at launch, for example. So it just doesn't really make any sense. I think it's the right decision. And finally, PlayStation Classic Dino Crisis can now be played on the latest PlayStation console, but fans aren't happy to discover that it could not be purchased and only accessible through PlayStation Premium's $120 a year subscription. This is an issue. Like they need to fix this. Like if you're going to re-release a game, you have to make it purchasable. You can't do it something where it's like you can only rent it. It could be a Capcom thing. Could be the way that Capcom decided to license this. No, we don't want that game to exist forever on a new machine. We only want someone to access it for 6 months. But once again, emulation has gotten so good that if you're able to generate revenue off of a game that, let's be honest, most people are going to buy this are probably people that played the original and just want to replay it again. Or maybe they haven't played it in a long time and they want to revisit it. You might as well just make it sellable so people can buy it and keep it, because if it's added to this catalog, that means it's more than likely not going to be there forever. Shoutouts of the week go out to Bloober Team and Konami. Silent Hill 2 has already sold over 1 million copies. I believe it only took them a few days, which is really cool to see. And shout out to Spike Chunsoft and Bandai Namco. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has sold over 3 million worldwide units in just 24 hours. Phenomenal numbers. Make sure to subscribe to Camp Koji on your favorite podcast platform so you can listen to it on the go. And if you already are, please leave us a review. It helps more than you know it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please follow us on Twitter and YouTube. Once again, I'm Joel, and I will see you all next week.